The French Chef is made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation and a grant from Hills Brothers Coffee Incorporated.
The problem of ordering things over the phone is sometimes you get a bit more than you bargained for. All I wanted was a great big hunk of Swiss cheese. Well, I got it. 185 pounds of genuine Swiss cheese. This all started when I thought it would be fun to show you how to make our special non-collapsible cheese souffle today on the French Chef. Welcome to the French Chef. I'm Julia Child. This is a cheese souffle, and it's a very special one. It's both non-collapsible and unmoldable. There. Have you ever seen a cheese souffle like that, which you can unmold? And it's non-collapsible because it's not going to sink down. I'm just going to leave it over here, and you can see how it stays up while we're making another one. And now, as long as this is going to be a cheese souffle, we might as well take a look at some cheeses. If you're going to make a French cheese souffle, you always use Gruyere or Emmental Swiss cheese. And this is the genuine Swiss cheese, which is called an Emmental, and it has the great big holes in it. But there are two types of what we call Swiss cheese from Switzerland. There's the other one called the Gruyere, which has little tiny holes in it, as you can see. And the Gruyere is less fat and a little more salty than the Emmental. I'm always confusing which the two are, and I finally invented a system by which I can remember them. Emmental mean immense tall holes, so you can remember Emmental between Gruyere. For this souffle, you can use either one. You'll probably usually find the Emmental with the big holes. And to make sure that it's Swiss, when they cut it up, they always leave some of the rind on. In the Gruyere, it says G-R-U-Y-E, accent grave, R-E, Switzerland. And both of them always have Switzerland all written on them, just like this great big wheel of cheese over here that says Switzerland, 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 all the way around. There are other kinds of Swiss, like Wisconsin Swiss and Danish Swiss and French Swiss, but the Swiss, I think, has a particular taste that nothing else has. And if you're going to buy the cheese, you want to keep it in a plastic bag in the refrigerator. Because it can turn moldy in about, in a certain amount of time. Probably you can keep it about 2 or 3 weeks in the refrigerator, but if you want to keep it very well, one of the best things I found for keeping cheese is a glass jar like this, and the name of it is the sanitary cheese preserver. This is on the theory that cleanliness and sanitariness is goodness. And the wonderful thing about this is, and what's the point of it, is it has up and down wedges in the bottom of it, which are about ½ an inch high. And then the secret is that you fill it with about 1/3 of a cup of white vinegar and 2 tablespoons of water and 1 tablespoon of salt, and you swish that liquid all around. And then when you put your cheese in, the cheese is above the liquid, and it's this vinegar salty liquid that preserves it. Then you put the cover on and put it in the refrigerator, and the cheese keeps remarkably well. And these you can find sometimes at department stores or old country stores or gourmet stores. And if you don't have one, you could make one perfectly easily by filling the bottom of a bowl with marbles and then putting in the vinegar and putting a top on. But I think these are very nice. And then, if you're going to use cheese in cooking, you usually grate it so it will melt quickly. And freshly grated cheese always has the best taste. And we'll just go through a bit of grating exercise. I'm going to take off the rind that says Switzerland, Switzerland. And, of course, there are many kinds of graters. You have this four-sided one that you can get at any hardware store with coarse holes. And if you can get one that's stainless steel, it's much the best because it doesn't rust. And then there's this cute little hand grater that's called a mouli, which is very nice if you just have small amounts of cheese. You put the cheese in and turn the crank, and there comes your grated cheese out. Those are very convenient. And then again, if you have quite a bit of cheese, you might want one of these table models. Here, I got this at some place in France, but I suppose you can get them around here too. You put the cheese in, there's a wooden pusher, and then you turn the crank, and out comes the cheese. And then if you have large quantities of cheese and you happen to have an electric mixer that has an attachment for grating, you just put all the cheese in and turn on the power. And there you are. I think these are very useful. And then, very often a recipe will say that you will have to have 1 cup of lightly packed grated cheese. And 1 cup of lightly packed cheese is 4 ounces. So if you remember those figures, you'll know how much to buy. And so now, after we've gotten the cheese all grated for the cheese souffle, we have to get ourselves ready. And the first thing to do is to read the recipe. It's a terrible thing how lots of people just forget to read the recipe, or they get halfway through a recipe and they find that something has happened or there's something unexpected, and so they can't do it. And I think the point is, if you have recipes that you rely on and you've carefully read the recipe and you've followed all the directions, and the dish doesn't come out, it's the recipe's fault, it's not your fault. So just remember that. If you go through it carefully, the recipe ought to turn out just the way it should. And now this recipe says, preheat the oven to 350 degrees and put the rack in the lower middle and set a pan of water in the oven. I've already done that, so we don't have to do that. And the next thing says, prepare an 8-cup souffle dish. And now this our non-collapsible souffle here, we made in a French charlotte mold, which is 4 inches high. And the reason that you want a high mold for this souffle is, though we call it non-collapsible, it does sink down about half the size of the souffle, so that half the size of the dish, so you want something that's high. This French charlotte mold is 4 inches high, but you can only get them at a French store. And this is a typical mold that they usually use for souffles, but that's too low. That's only about 2.5 inches. But you can use any kind of a baking dish. This would be quite a good size. And this is an extremely useful American model here. This is even higher than our French dish, and this is an 8-cup fireproof ceramic mold, so I'm going to use that. I think it's better to use the kind of things that you can get. And to prepare the souffle mold, it means to butter it. I always use my fingers for buttering, so I think it's much easier. And you want to be sure to have lots of butter in the bottom, because if it isn't thoroughly buttered, you then cannot unmold it. Now this 8-cup mold will serve 6 to 8 people. But just be sure in making this dish that you have it heavily buttered, particularly on the bottom. And then we're going to sprinkle the interior of the mold with cheese. You could use breadcrumbs, you could use Parmesan cheese, and I'm just going to use our grated Swiss. And the point of this is to give a little nice brown color to the bottom, and also so that the souffle will unmold nicely. I put in about 2 tablespoons of cheese in that. And so now all you need to remember with this, in this first part of this souffle, is get yourself any kind of a mold that's high enough. You want it to be 4 or 5 inches high and hold 8 cups. If you don't have a high one, you could even use a straight-sided saucepan. I've used that frequently, and if the handle is fairly straight, you can unmold perfectly easily. And then the next thing to do is to assemble your ingredients. For this we need eggs, milk, butter, flour, cheese, and then we need various utensils like a saucepan and a whip. And then if you get yourself in the habit of doing that always, then you can get very quickly ahead. And then we are going to do our sauce base, because a souffle is, and I'm always saying this because I think it's a good thing for you to remember, all it is a thick sauce with the flavoring, and the flavoring can be mushrooms, fish, tomato, chocolate, or in this case, cheese. And then it is stiffly beaten egg whites, and the egg whites make the souffle puff as the souffle goes into the oven. And for our thick sauce base, we're going to make a bechamel. And this is our old friend, the bechamel, just like our old friend, the velouté. We're going to have 2.5 tablespoons of butter and 3 tablespoons of flour, and they're going to cook slowly together. Remember, when you're measuring your flour, dip your spoon in and level it off. There's 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, and 3 tablespoons. And while that's cooking, we're going to have 3/4 of a cup of milk. And that's to be heating also. And then we cook the butter and flour together slowly so that they're to foam and froth for about 2 minutes without coloring. And then when we've done that, we have a roux, R-O-U-X. We've had an awful lot of roux too, but always remember that you cook your butter and your flour together. And when you take that off heat and let it cool for just a moment, and then as soon as your milk is hot, you then pour it all into the souffle. Wait for a moment until that has stopped bubbling. All of this is so that you won't get any lumps in your sauce. And then in goes your milk, and then stir it vigorously with a wire whip. Make sure that you get all around the edges and corners of the pan so that you have all of your roux, your flour and butter, mixed in with the liquid. And then you set it over heat again, and you let it cook until it thickens. Certainly these two cousinly sauces, the velouté and the bechamel, are so terribly quickly made. And if you always remember to cook your flour and butter together, you don't need any more than just letting it come up to the boil and just boil for 1 minute, because your flour's already been cooked. See, now that's thick now, and just let it, you see it's bubbling in there. And just let that bubble for just about a moment, and then it's just as thick as it will be. And then we're going to have 1/2 teaspoon of salt and some pepper and some nutmeg, and that all goes in. I always like to use freshly ground pepper, giving about 3 grinds, which would give a good pinch. And then a little bit of nutmeg. You can often find these nutmeg graters, and I found this in my hardware store. They're going to be rather popular now, and they're very convenient. And then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. There. That all gets mixed up. And now we have the makings. Now let's see, we have to have 3 eggs in this, and we want just the egg yolks. And the egg yolks go in simply to add a little strength and richness to the souffle base. And you beat the egg yolk in to that hot sauce. And I usually like to put the eggs, break the eggs into a little jar first, so that if I have any bits of egg yolk in the white, I can get it out and I don't ruin my whole mixture. There's 2 eggs in. And that goes again into my container. And now in the 3rd egg. There. Now we have 3 egg yolks in the sauce and three whites in reserve. Now we come to, so far this is just like any ordinary souffle, but the difference is, if you had an ordinary souffle, we'll look at our non-collapsible one. An ordinary souffle would be just as flat as a pancake by this time. But this one, because it's done in a special way, has stayed up, and the difference is entirely in the egg whites. The ordinary souffle has 1 more egg white than egg yolk, and this souffle has twice as many egg whites as egg yolks. I have 3 egg whites here, and I have 3 more here, which makes 3/4 of a cup. And the whole success in the souffle is in how you beat your egg whites and how you fold them in. That's really, if there's any secret at all, it's the egg white handling that is the whole, this is the whole crux of the matter. And so now we have the sauce base made, and we're now going to beat the egg whites. Now in this you can beat the egg whites either in a mixer or any kind of a bowl. I just like to use my French equipment, which is a copper bowl and a big wire whip. And I'm going to put a pot holder down so that the bowl won't slip. And we have 6 egg whites, or 3/4 of a cup. And in they go. And then start beating very slowly. You do exactly the same way if you were beating them in the machine. Start slowly until the egg whites begin to foam, which means that you've begun to broke them up. And then as soon as they've broken up, then you would add, if you're using a copper bowl like this, you would add, in any case, you would add a little bit of salt, which gives them some flavor. That's about 1/4 of a teaspoon. And then if you're using an electric mixer or any other kind of bowl, use a full 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar, which has the effect of keeping the egg whites mounted. And then go on beating. Now while I'm beating, I'll go over the ingredients for that bechamel sauce again. That's 2½ tablespoons of butter, 3 tablespoons of flour, and 3/4 cup of hot milk, 1/2 tablespoon of salt, and a good pinch of pepper and nutmeg. And then 3 egg yolks and 6 egg whites. Now be sure when you're beating egg whites that you beat in an absolutely clean, dry bowl, and that you have an absolutely clean, dry whip, and that there are no specks of yolks in your whites. Because if there are, you'll find that your egg whites won't mount. They're supposed to mount 7 times the original volume. And that was with 3/4 of a cup. That's 7 times 3 is 21 divided by 4. You should get 5 full cups of beaten egg whites. Now I can be a little faster. Another thing is, if your egg whites are at room temperature, you're going to get more volume. So I always take them out and let them sit around for a while. Now, so those are, I should say, just about done. You see, they're holding in the beater, and when you lift them up, they make sharp points, and the point drops down just a little bit, and that means that they're just right. You don't want to overbeat them because they're supposed to be moist and velvety and not dry. And another way you can tell is to hold the bowl upside down. See, and they stay perfectly. So remember, now this is the very important thing. You've got to beat your egg whites properly. They've got to hold in the whip like this, or you've got to be able to turn the bowl upside down, and they can't be dry. And so now we have all the makings for our souffle. We have our thick sauce base, and we have our flavoring, which is cheese, and we have our beaten egg whites, so we can assemble it all. And now the first thing is you put in a big dollop of egg whites. And you just frankly stir that in, and this is to lighten your sauce so that you can fold the rest in easily. And then you put in your 1 cup of grated Swiss cheese, and then you stir that all around. See, the point is that you have to have the sauce liquid enough so that you can fold the rest of the things in easily without deflating your egg whites. Because your egg whites are your puffing medium, and if you deflate them, you don't get no souffle. So, now we have the folding business, which we've done many times before, of taking a rubber spatula, go right down through the middle, and then to the side of the pan. The spatula is flat, and then it comes up, so that you see you're bringing a little bit of your mixture up over your egg whites. And this whole business of folding is so that you are not deflating your egg whites. Because if all those little air bubbles get deflated by a rough handling of the folding, then you will not have any kind of a puffed souffle. And this should all take just about a minute, and you keep turning the pan around and getting up, down, around the corners and in the middle of the souffle, and you don't want to overfold. And then it goes into the mold. And with this souffle, it's going to, as it cools, it's going to, when it bakes, it puffs way up, and then as it cools, it sinks down to about where it originally filled the mold, a little bit more. So you want to fill the mold by up to about 2/3. If you fill the mold too high because you have this extra egg white, you'll find that the souffle will come up over, and then it might spill over, and then again you won't have no souffle. You'll just have a mess in the oven and a little bit left in the dish. And so now this is filled by about 2/3, and it's ready to go into the oven. And the oven has been preheated for a good 20 minutes at 350. The rack's in the lower middle, and then it sets in a pan of water. And the reason that it sets in the pan of water, this is your other secret in this souffle besides the extra egg whites, is it is to cook very slowly, and having it in a pan of, the pan of the water slows it down, because the water can't get more than 212. So this cooks for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. And then when it's done, you can still leave it in the warming oven. I've got to take out my platter first. And it will sink down to where it's supposed to. And out she comes. That's what I like about this souffle, is that it doesn't boss you, you boss it. Because if it's ready before you are, you can just leave it in a warm oven and nothing will happen to it at all. And so we are now ready to unmold it. You see, that was done a little ahead of time, and I turned the oven down a bit, and it sunk down a little bit. It was just about the same. It came up to there, and then it goes down as it cools. And then butter your serving platter first. And you'll see why I suggest that you butter it in a moment. And then turn the platter upside down over the mold, and then reverse the two. Now, while this is an awfully good mold, you'll find that it's a little bit difficult to unmold because it doesn't have any edges that you can get hold of. So you have to lift it up. This is why one reason I chose it, to show you that it can be a little difficult. I'll take a beer can opener on one side, a knife on the other, and I'll lift it up. Yes, I can see it coming out. I think they could have designed this a little bit better. Eeh, that's hot, but there she is. Now you see, there it is. And that, because this mold was a little higher than our metal Charlotte mold. Now I've got that under here. You see, you had the difference in heights here. This one is going to, as it sits, it's going to sink down probably about ½ an inch. And this one, I didn't even fill this one as high as I could have, but that has sunk down to within about 2/3, but it does not sink down any farther than that. And if you get this souffle done ahead of time, you can unmold it. And I buttered the platter so if it wasn't quite centered right, I could move it a little bit. And then you could put a mold or a bowl back on it and then stick it in a warming oven. It will stay perfectly well for ½ an hour. See, that's the beauty of this souffle. You're the complete boss of it at every inch of the way. And now, I think with the cheese souffle, it's good to serve a sauce with it. You can serve mushroom or shrimp or fresh tomato, whatever appeals to you. I have a little tomato sauce here. And then another reason for the sauce is you might have unmolded, and if you hadn't buttered the bottom quite enough, you find that there might be a few little bald spots on top. And then you could just, in that case, you could just put some sauce on the top of it. In this case, this is unmolded nicely. There's sort of a little freckle there. So in that case, I think I'll just put a little bit of parsley. You always have to have parsley and other things around just in case you have to do a little bit of cover-up work somewhere. And so this, you see, we don't have to worry about rushing into the dining room the way you do with the usual souffle. So I could just leisurely walk in with no fears. And here is our souffle, and we're serving it this time for a chic little luncheon. And this is a main course. It would be very nice for supper, too. And I'm going to, when you serve, remember to back your fork and serving spoon, and then pull the souffle apart at first. As you see with this, it has a perfectly lovely, delicate texture. Although it just doesn't have, it has nothing to do with a pudding it's just like the best souffle you can imagine. And with it, you could serve a green salad or some buttered asparagus tips and some French bread. And I would serve an Alsatian wine. I've picked a Gewürztraminer, which is delicious with this. And now, with this souffle, you don't have to use just cheese. You have, for these proportions, you'd have 1 cup of any kind of other flavoring you'd like cooked chopped seafood. So what's difficult about this souffle? Nothing. You just make it once and remember all we did about the egg whites of the beating and the folding in. And I think you'll find that this souffle is going to be one of your very best friends. Because anytime you want to have something that's easy to assemble, as this certainly is, but that's dramatic to serve and delicious to eat, just remember the non-collapsible souffle. So that's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit. Souffle all along. So that's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit.
Julia Child is co-author of the book Mastering the Art of French Cooking.